guys, welcome to this new video. In today's video, this is the Q&A that you've been waiting for about the real estate project in southern Vietnam. So if you guys don't know, I bought a land a couple of years ago and I built a house last year, and today's video is the Q&A. So I collected all your different questions and I'm gonna answer in this video. And then I have Kim with me, that is a local. You are born in Saigon, raised here, and then you have experience in all southern Vietnam, and she had some question for me, so I invited her to ask me some of those questions.
Yeah, because as I know the law, the foreigner kind of like cannot buy a land in Vietnam. So how come you bought the land in Vietnam, and how can you build your house on that land?
So very good question. Many foreigners can consider investing in Vietnam real estate, but there is a lot of regulation, especially about owning lands in Vietnam. As you may know, Kim, even locals, they don't really own a land, right? They will just, the government is the owner, and then Vietnamese people will just have use rights to use that land for a certain period of time. So obviously, as a foreigner, you also cannot own a land. So there is two ways you can usually do. Is either you set up a company, so you have to work with reliable and trustworthy lawyers that can help you to set up an LLC. It can be under your name, but usually it's better to partner with a local, to have someone having that company that will be a local company. And then the second option is to use a nominee. So you have to have a friend in Vietnam, someone that you trust. So it can be Kim, it can be someone else that you know for long enough. It can be your girlfriend, it can be a good friend that you have from a long time. And then basically that person will be the real owner of the title. So they will have the SODO, so the title of property, under their name. And as a foreigner, you just trust that person enough to be able to keep that land ownership. And then if you want later to build a house, 100% belong to that nominee that will own your title.
As you mentioned that, foreigners have to find someone that they can trust. How can we trust that person and get them involved to your business?
It's again relying on local people. So I had someone over there that knew a reliable constructor who built houses. I meet him over a coffee. We discuss the budget and the capital I wanted to put into that project. And then basically I had someone else involved who were kind of double checking everything that that contractor was doing. So I was not 100% relying on this contractor, but I have a friend. So every 2 or 3 days, that person was going there. Usually if he was going in the morning, he was bringing some cafe soda to the workers. He was chit-chatting a little bit with the constructor. And then when he was going around 6 p.m., he was bringing the beer. So he knew that if you want to work with people like locals, you have also to spend time, you have also to give them a little bit of your time, having some empathy, going there, treating them well, basically, so they will spend time to work well on your project. And then every time there were some problems about the construction, you can point them those problems and they will be willing to fix it. Rather than if you are completely this stage from the project, if one day you come and then you criticize their work, of course they will take it very bad.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to lose face, you will bargain the price, etc. So it's always better to have a third party involved, a friend, someone who knows the contractor, who can help you into doing this properly.
I understand. So it will cost a lot of money to build a house here, huh? So I wonder how you pay to the construction. I mean, you pay interest, you pay monthly, or you pay at once?
So very good question, Kim. So we're gonna reveal you the price of that construction a little bit after. About the payment term, usually you discuss with that contractor and you put an installment. So the way I proceed is that I pay the person 30% upfront. So obviously he has to hire people, he has to buy the materials, etc. Then every 2 weeks we were paying around 10%. So every 2 weeks you send money to that guy to keep working on your project. And then in the end I kept 5% for my own. So I didn't pay him 100% of the whole plan. You keep 5%, you check everything in the house, you ask him to come and to fix if there is minor mistakes that he's been doing. And then after 6 months, you pay him back the 5% left. That's how I proceed about the payment term.
So the way you pay, as I know that Vietnamese, they don't like that you keep 5% of their money. So you have to be on the agreement in advance, yeah?
Yeah, sure. Everything has to be tightened with a contract. So the first time you're going to decide everything, it can be a little bit bargaining as well, but you have to make sure that you're on the same page with the contractor that's going to work for you, because in the end of the day, you are partners, right? You are working together. And you don't want a house that will have any problems or any things that the guy doesn't like you, so he won't spend a lot of time, or he will do the very, very shitty work, you know, he won't really be super willing to put extra work. So obviously everything has been, it's a contract and both parties mutually agree on that payment term. Yeah.
So after you build house, because you living in Saigon, I wonder, will you for rent the house after the house finished?
So that project is not for living myself. As Kim say, I live in Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon. That project, the idea was to really rent it. That's why it was planning at the beginning to put a certain investment that could bring a certain ROI, so return on investment, that I revealed on the previous video, that is around 15% net in the pocket. And then, so obviously, yeah, because I plan that project to be a project that I will rent. Yeah. I had for the first year a young couple that is around 35 years old that rent the house for 1 year. And then just last week, we have a new tenant that is now an old couple. So they are around 60 years old. So it's not very common in Vietnam. Usually the old people, they will live with their child. But for this family, they wanted to be a little bit outside of their own house, have a little bit of privacy. So now it's an old couple that is renting the house, and then the price is 4 million. So I'm renting that house for 4 million per month. That's why if you calculate 4 million per month, if you deduct the fact that the house gonna lose value in time, you have around 7 million per year of depreciation. And then if you calculate the ROI, you have 15% of ROI per year. So it's going to lead you to the last question that probably you want to ask me.
Yes, if you can answer, it's a little personal, okay? So how much is it to build the house in Nikon Delta altogether?
So in total, you have to plan a budget of around $10,000 for this type of house. I will leave here on the video exactly the installment that we've been like agreeing with the contractor, so you will see the different signature, etc. And then the total, that is around 230 million Vietnam dong. So if you calculate, it's around $10,000. You have to remember that it was more than a year ago. It was a year and a half ago almost. And at that time, the euro was high, so I could pay by euro. The euro was strong at that time. Now the euro is very weak. And if you check that paper that is appearing right now on the screen, that is listing all the different materials, you can have an idea about how it was on the construction side. And we didn't include in that paper the fact that we build after a roof at the entrance. So that's why the price is a little bit more than 230 million. It was maybe around 250 million Vietnam dong, so 1.5 years ago. So that's the budget you have to plan if you want to build such a house. Obviously, as you can guess, it was also because we wanted to get some good ROI on those kind of house. You can have a house that will be way more fancy. If you want to build, for instance, 2 floors, you have almost to multiply this price by 2. But you won't necessarily be able to rent that house that will have 2 floors 2 times more than the current price that we are renting that house. That's why we thought that 10,000 US dollar was a very good price, very competitive to have an asset that will add value to the land, that will generate every month monthly cash flow, and it was a very fun project to launch in Vietnam. So thanks Kim for the questions. I will take all the questions that you guys have been listing under the previous video and answer right now.
So here I am in my apartment a couple of days after shooting the video, and I have different questions that you guys asked me in the preview video, so I'm gonna answer them now. So another question that I received was, how much does it cost to buy a land in Vietnam? And the answer is actually, it depends. It depends the location, it depends the type of land. If you remember, in Vietnam you can buy different types of land. You have the rice field type of land, you have the garden type of land, you have the constructible type of land. So if you are considering buying a land to build a house, for instance, this project, you need to have a constructible area. If you don't have, you will only be able to build very, very light structures. So it can be relevant in some manufacturing areas. You can have some shops made by toll that can be done on the garden type of land, but it's always better to have a real constructible part in your land, so the structure that you're going to build can have real foundations and a real small shop or small hub or small warehouse that people that want to rent your land will ask. So number one, location. Obviously inside the city is going to be very expensive. Outside of the city, in manufacturing zones, in QL types of roads, you know, those kind of big roads, it's going to be also more expensive. The closest you are to the center, in general, the more expensive it is. And if you are very, very far from everything, it can be very cheap. So there is not a proper answer about this. Very expensive in the downtown, very cheap outside of the big cities. And finally, it also depends on the land potential appreciation in the future. If you are buying a land in a part of a town or very close to a project or very close to new developments that are going to happen in the city, that land we already have a certain appreciation in the value, and then that land may gain more and more value years after years. That's also a criteria that is very important for me. Vietnam lands has potential, but you can still make mistakes if you are not buying the lands at the right area. So it really depends on your purpose. If you want to also bet on some kind of capital gain, that's something you should do. If you just want to find a land just to build your retirement house and you don't really care about land and value appreciation, you take this out of your mind. Now the other question that I had was, what about the property tax and the income tax when you are doing such a project? So in Vietnam, you don't have property tax just like in France. If you are buying a land, the seller usually pay 2% of personal income tax, so usually 2% of the land value. When you are going to a notary, it's going to be taxes that you will have to pay as a personal income. Then you will have the notary taxes, and then you will have the transfer taxes when you are dealing with the authorities to make that transfer from one person to one person. Roughly, it's about 3% of tax. So when you are buying a land, let's say 10,000 US dollar, if you are selling that land 20,000 US dollar, when you're going to sell it, you're going to have 3% of tax on those 20,000 US dollar. On this case, I'm considering if you are buying through a nominee, if you are choosing to buy through a company, it's going to be, you will have corporate income tax. So the tax will be different. That's something you have to have in mind if you are doing such a project. So if the scale of the project is very small and you are having good connections with people in Vietnam, people that you are trusting, it can be your wife, very good friends, girlfriends, that you are trusting very much, then you should choose the nominee option. And then if you cannot do that, you still have the company option, but it's way more complicated to have everything settled down. So that's about the taxes. So no property tax in terms of the income tax, I just mentioned them. And when you are owning lands in Vietnam, you don't have any yearly tax yet, but they are actually considering implementing such a property tax for people who have more than 2 lands. So if you have 1 land, you are exempt from such a tax. If you have more, you will have such typical property tax is not yet implemented. That's why, from my observation, over the last 5-6 years, I've been checking the real estate market. There have been a lot of potential before. Now things are getting more and more difficult, but obviously each emerging market will have this trend where this is the time to really surf big opportunities, and then at a later stage it's going to be more difficult and things going to be more regulated. So I'm not saying this time is over, I'm just saying things are getting more strict, are getting more regulated. So on an investor perspective, that's something you have to consider. And it led me to the other question I received: does it worth it investing in Vietnam? From my own perspective and experience, yes, but again, I've been living here for a while, so I can benchmark the different options I have worldwide. I have an online business that brings me Euro, USD, so my lifestyle and my life is kind of diverse. Already, I have experience investing in France, so in a very mature and established market. Real estate in the West already got a plateau for a couple of years. And then with the inflation, with the fact that in those economies, things are not getting that well in terms of protection from a landlord perspective. Over there, if you are renting your place to someone and that person doesn't want to pay your rent, you have basically no option. You have to go to a lawyer, etc. It's going to be very complicated. So if you have that mindset of building properties or investing to rent or to solve some chance, from my own experience, France, the market that I know the most, is not that interesting. In Vietnam, you have something that is more dynamic. Again, things are getting more regulated, but from my understanding, it's worth investing in Vietnam. But again, very big disclaimer, because I know people that are going to say that in Vietnam, you don't have any ownership. In Vietnam, it's a communist country. You know, all the bullshit that people are spreading out there, and most of the time, those people never ever spend more than 1 week in Vietnam, or they've been living here 20-30 years ago and they left Vietnam for good. So of course they are spreading that bad aura that everything is bad in Vietnam. But if you are considering investing in Vietnam, you have to define your own risk. Any types of investment is going to be risk reward, right? If you are putting 10,000 in cryptocurrencies, the price can be divided by 2 in a couple of weeks. It's obvious. So if you are investing into cryptocurrencies, you won't go all in, right? This is the same if you are considering investing into lands, investing into properties in emerging market. And I'm not only talking about Vietnam here, I'm talking about Thailand, I'm talking about Cambodia, all those markets here. You will never go all in. So let's say you have a total wealth of 100,000 US dollar. You're gonna put, I don't know, 5%, 10%, 20% of that wealth that you are having. You won't go 90%, 100%. Don't sell your apartment in France to buy a land in Vietnam under your girlfriend or a nominee that you don't know, right? Don't do that. It's gonna be, or it can lead you to very, very big trouble. But if you are able to really put the pros and cons of all those different markets, very mature markets just like France, and then here dynamic and very emerging markets, which means a lot of growth and a lot of capital appreciation. If you are doing such real estate project, it may be interesting to look into. So don't go all in. Again, that's my big disclaimer for that video. Another question I received: can you get the same price right now if you are considering such a project? So if you are considering building the house that I've been explaining in that video, can you make that house for around 10,000 US dollars? No, it's not possible anymore. Why? Because when I did that project, you have to put everything in the context. It was during COVID, so the border was locked in Vietnam. So it means that people were more hungry to look for jobs, right? So it was easier to negotiate with contractors, with suppliers, the different raw materials. For the last 6 months, 1 year, we got an inflation everywhere. And most of the raw materials in Vietnam are gonna be imported, or if they are manufactured in Vietnam, it's gonna be more expensive. So don't expect that the you can go now today to any person and say that foreigner build a house for 10,000 US dollar. I want to have the same house for the same price. They will tell you no, just that's it. Another thing is that I built that house in Mekong Delta. In Mekong Delta, there is a very convenient way to commute just because you have the Mekong River. So let's say you have a factory at 10 kilometers far from your house. Then they can just send a boat on the river, and then they will bring you the sand, they will bring you the materials directly from that boat. So that's the way we did. And then because everything is so convenient there, it's gonna push down the price. If you are doing such a project in Bun Matot, Dalat, Kon Tum, you know, those cities, or even in richer cities like Hoi An, Da Nang, don't expect paying such a price. It's gonna be way more expensive. So, two components: inflation, the rising price of all commodities, raw materials, and then the fact that I did it in Mekong Delta, I did it with people that already have experience. So that's why I could get such a very good deal for this house. So it led me to the other questions. Will I invest more in 2022 and 2023? It depends. Why? Because actually I already made another investment late 2021, beginning 2022 in the manufacturing area of Vietnam, a land that we bought under the market. So this is the same. Every time you want to do such project, don't rush. Just don't go with any random agent and then they will tell you that over there, this is where you should invest. Don't do that. Try to get some locals, try to spend at least a couple of weeks. Go there a few times in the region and observe the different projects. And then when you really see where everything is focused, so let's say if you have a manufacturing area where all the shops or warehouse or small factories are, that's the location you should invest from my perspective. It's going to be obviously more expensive than if you are buying the land in the middle of nowhere, but you have more chance of capital appreciation. This is my vision of doing such projects. I have more the value investing mindset, but I understand that some people, they want to buy very, very, very cheap and then wait 10 years, 15 years, that maybe one day there will be kind of a pump in a certain area, and then finally your land will get appreciation. But that's not my mindset. I prefer to choose an area that there is already activity, there is already business, there is already people passing by all day long, and then that location will be probably the location I will prefer, at least for the first investments. And then maybe one day if you do a couple of flipping lands like that, you can consider an exotic location in the middle of nowhere, in Kon Tum, in Bun Matot, in Bao Loc. And actually now even those locations are pretty hot, so it's not cheap anymore. So maybe not sure in 2022 I will do another one. 2023, let's see, because again you have to take in consideration the worldwide economy. Vietnam is very dependent to other countries. We are here in a manufacturing country exporting, and then the Vietnam rely a lot on their manufacturing power and then ability of attract foreign direct investment to build and then to grow everything. But they may be a limit after a point. So I'm sure we still have 5, 10, 15 years to surf in Vietnam. But because of, again, the macroeconomic environment, you can also sometimes just wait a little bit, see how your investments are doing. You can sell one land, two lands, you can do some arbitrage a little bit. If some people are in a need of selling, you can make a very aggressive offer and see if the person is willing to sell you that asset for such a price. And then again, depending on your own risk reward, you can make your own plan, do your own due diligence of the location you are investing in and the people you're going to rely on to do such a project, and then see how it goes. And finally, I still want to highlight some of the weaknesses that are start to point in Vietnam. It's about the fact that probably the golden age has passed. We're not sure if it has passed already or if it starts to be again, or if it will become more tricky in the next upcoming years. Is that everything is again more and more regulated in Vietnam. So last year you go to any notary, and then when you sell your land, you can just put any price with the notary, and then you're going to pay your personal income tax. So remember the 2% plus all the different fees, so around 3%. You can pay that on a declared price. Now this is not possible anymore in Vietnam. The notary has to have the price that is the real transaction price between the buyer and the seller. So things are getting more regulated. Another big thing is that until now it was possible to buy a big land. Let's say you buy 1 hectare, or you buy 1,000 square meter, and then you divide that land into 5, 10 different portions, and on that lands you're gonna put some constructible area as well, if your initial lands used to have some constructible area. So many investors did that, bought a big land and then split it and then sell it individually. So it's good and bad to do that, because of course sometimes it's push a little bit more some areas that there is nothing, but they're gonna tell you that many investors wanna purchase those kind of lands. So authorities are regulating right now such transactions. So if you had that opportunity before, maybe now this time is over. I don't think it will always be over. It's just that now, because there's been too much focus on some specific areas, everything got more and more regulated. But I'm pretty sure if you are again choosing the right location, having the right contact locally to be able to help you understanding the market, the trends, and then the potential, you can still make good deals into investing in Vietnam.
Thanks, Kim, for all the questions. I hope you guys have a better understanding about how does it work as a foreigner. If you want to invest in Vietnam, select lands with potential. Either you want to flip a land, you buy a land, you keep it for a couple of years, then you sell it, or you do such a project in Vietnam. You buy a land that still will have some potential of growth. For me, it's important to have this mindset, and then you can build a house on it that you can rent to locals to get monthly cash flow as a foreign investors. Hope you guys enjoy this video, this discussion with Kim here today. You see, she's a very good co-host. Her questions are very good, straight to the point, so we could have a very interesting discussion today. If you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up. Check below again if you want more information about buying lands or doing such a research project. You have everything below in the description. Thank you, Kim, for your time today, and I see you in the next video. Bye, guys.
Been down and I'ma get it right. Dead on sight like